Well, Lieutenant Governor Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
You bet. Good to be here. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays. Let's cut right to the chase now. The big news this session is the $27 billion surplus. You told the members that they should count their lucky stars. They are part of this session because the opportunity to do a lot of big things is there. But of course, we're going to have to narrow that down. You identified your top priority to do with that surplus is property taxes. You kind of built your career on that issue. The Senate has tried to tackle it for sessions on end now. Why is this session the time when Texans can see some substantial and sustainable change in property taxes?
So great question. And they're already seeing change. And this year, I think, was the first time they saw the benefits of what we did in 2019 because COVID kind of interrupted the bills we passed then. In the past, whatever your appraisal value went up, your property taxes went up almost at the same rate. If your value went up 8%, most people saw an 8% increase. Well, now when people go back and look at their property tax bill they got in October, compared to what their appraisal was, particularly in our bigger cities and bigger counties, but everywhere across rural Texas, they saw that their tax bill actually didn't go up like it used to. Our goal was to limit the growth to population inflation, which in the past has been 3 or 4%. And we had to cut that back. And we did that by limiting county and city governments to no more than 3.5% increase in their budget and school districts 2.5%. And we backfilled that money to the school district through state money, sales taxes to help keep the school tax down. So this won't be the case for everyone watching, but I hope if some people go back and look at it and they say, gosh, Dan was right. My appraisal went up really high, but my taxes didn't. In some cases, school taxes went down a little, went up a little. And again, this is on average. There's going to be an outlier who didn't see any increase and an outlier who went up a little bit more than we hoped. But on average, we limited that growth, and that was an important part. The other thing that we did last session, I increased the homestead exemption from 15,000 where it had been for decades to 25,000 previously in 15, and this last year to 40,000. And one of my priorities that you saw at the press conference was I want to increase that to 60 or 65,000. When you take 65,000 off the top of your property taxes, that's a significant savings to every homeowner. Before I leave office, I'd like it to be $100,000 off the top. The average home in Texas is about $350,000 now. Some areas a little less, some areas a little bit more. But that's our goal. You shouldn't feel like you're running your home from the state. It is a main source of our revenues at local governments and school districts, and so we have to work with them. But they also have to work like we are, trying to keep our budgets, no more than population inflation.
Of course, you said property taxes is number one. Another one of your priorities, though, is education and making sure that our schools have all of the resources they need and more. Those two things are so intimately linked. How do you keep raising the homestead exemption in a way that is sustainable for our school districts to make sure that they can also get more resources, given that those property taxes are where they're finding those resources?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So every time we raise the homestead exemption, we have to pay for that for the schools. In other words, we're not taking that from the schools. We're sending them a check instead of you sending them a check as a homeowner, if that makes sense. So I think the last time when we raised it to 40,000, I think it was about $1.3 billion, $1.5 billion. That comes out of our budget back to them. So in essence, the state sales tax collection is making up that difference, if that makes sense. I hope it does. Mm-hmm. And so we always have to do that carefully because we don't ever want to be in a situation where we say, well, sorry, we can't afford to do it this year. So we do it in incremental steps that grows with our economy, grows with our budget. Some years you have a down year, some years you have a big up year like we have this year. But in essence, we want to keep those kind of programs something that we can say, we're cutting this or we're raising that, and it's going to stay that way. We're not going to go back and take it back. So that's why, we could make it more than 60 or 65,000 this session because we have the money. But would it be sustainable 2, 4, 6 years from now? So we go to 60, 65 now, the next session go to 75 or 80, and then get it to 100. And so that's how that would work. And so that's how we watch our money. We're going to have Glenn Hager, the controller, will give us the final number in January. We think it's going to be more than $30 billion surplus. To put that in perspective, since I've been around since 2007, we had an $11 billion shortfall one year, and we've had $5 or $6 billion surpluses, but never anything like this. And so our Constitution, as you learned at the press conference, our Constitution limits what we can spend. Just like we limit local governments, it limits what we can spend. And so we have about 12 billion of that 27 to 35 billion surplus that we can spend within the budget. And then certain projects like building new mental care hospitals or other one-time projects, we can put in constitutional amendments. I'm not saying that one will be, that may be in the base budget, but some things can be outside of the budget that the people can vote on next November. And that's how we can spend some additional money. But we also want to save a big chunk of that money because we don't know what's ahead. Remember, when we pass a budget in next May, it takes effect next September and goes all the way to August of 2025. So when we're sitting here talking about the budget now, I'm actually thinking about what's going to happen in Texas at the end of this next year, 23, in 24 and 25. So that's a real challenge sometimes. And you ask any businessman how much you're going to make 2.5 years from now, they couldn't tell you down to the penny. And we can't tell you down to the penny either. But our numbers are so big, we have to be as close as we can to being on target.
They're huge numbers, and it seems like you could spend the surplus on any one of the priorities that you listed. Is Governor Abbott going to be able to fulfill his campaign promise to spend half of that surplus on property taxes, or do you have other ideas?
Well, if we have a $27 billion surplus, and I think, again, it's going to be more than that, but half of 27 is 13.
Right.
Well, that's more than we can spend on the constitutional cap. So that would take everything we have. But I agree with the governor in this respect. We need to make property taxes our number one priority. I have since 2007. Before I was even in office, I was at the Capitol fighting for property tax relief. So it has to be our number one area that we focus our money on. I think we can get there in different ways. Again, you could do some things as constitutional amendments. And if you look at the 12 billion that we can spend constitutionally in the budget, well, we're surely going to spend close to half of that on property taxes, I believe. So, and he has other programs that he's requesting money for, billions of dollars to continue the border wall and border security. And so we're going to get there. But Governor Abbott and I are on the same page. The number one issue is getting, when you have a surplus, is getting savings for taxpayers. So we agree on that totally.
I want to shift now quickly from all of those fiscal concerns to the social issue that is at the top of everybody's mind. You have been hesitant to commit, as has the governor, to any kind of amendment to SB 8. You've kind of downplayed some of the rumblings among some, or at least a couple, Republican senators on adding in exceptions for rape and incest into that abortion ban, and kind of leaving it up to the members for now. But Governor, I have never heard you leave anything up just to the members. I have a feeling that if that was something you had in mind, you would be at least heavily hinting to the members that you'd like to see that.
Sure.
If all of that was up to you, would you amend SB 8 to add exceptions for rape, incest, life of the mother, things like that?
So I'm pro-life, and look, every life is a life, even through rape and incest. And the left likes to make this their whole argument. Remember, Beto O'Rourke and my Democrat challenger, they wanted to have abortion through birth. You talk about radical policies. Democrats had the radical policies. And now that the Dobbs decision has been made and Roe v. Wade has been overturned, each state goes back to their original bill. Well, our original bill on abortion was written by Democrats. We didn't have Republicans back when it was written. So that original bill didn't have an exception for rape and incest. So the Democrats didn't have it in their original bill, but to protect the life of the mother. I don't call it rumblings of senators. Look, every senator has a right to their opinion, and I respect their opinions, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And so, yes, we have had 2 Republicans who have said openly, but we'll have 19 Republicans. I haven't heard from the other 17. I don't think there's going to be a bill filed on it. I don't know, by a Republican in the House or Senate. And so sometimes, and when you say that, look, I'm always listening to the senators. Remember, I can have initiatives and priorities, but I need the votes in the Senate to bring them to the floor and pass them to the House. So we work very closely together. I was a senator. I know how senators think. I know how they operate. They don't want to be told what they're voting on or what they're not voting on. And we work really well as a team together. So, look, I don't think there'll be a groundswell argument on that or a bill on that by Republicans. We'll see. And if that happens, it happens, and like anything else, we'll make our opinion at the time. But right now, on an issue like that, look, there are other issues. There are people who want to legalize marijuana. There are people who want gambling casinos. There's people who want sports betting. There are people who want all kinds of things. I don't give an opinion on everything, Ryan, because that stifles some members from saying what they think. So on some issues, I let the senators go through their work. I have great senators. I trust them. They're all very smart. Whether we agree or disagree, I always respect their views. And that's how we operate on this and a lot of other issues.
Oh, okay, well, at least on SB8, that's instructive.
Yeah.
Gambling, though.
A good leader listens, and I'm a good leader, and I listen.
Gambling, you mentioned that. Is this the session we see any kind of changes there? Again,
I haven't seen a bill even filed on it. I haven't had anyone mention it to me that they're interested in doing anything. It doesn't mean that in a session things don't change, but I don't see any movement on that right now. A lot of talk out there, but I don't see any movement on it. And you can usually tell what's on a senator's mind or a House member, but just focus on the Senate chamber. You can usually tell what's on their mind by the bills they file early. And bill filing.
You won't be asking a senator to focus on that or bring that to.
No, I don't. Look, I don't ask senators to carry a bill. Sometimes I do. I mean, on occasion, but those are bills that I already know they support. That's just like choosing the right senator to pass it. The senators make the decision on the bills they file. When I was a senator, the lieutenant governor then didn't come to me and say, Dan, these are the bills you need to file. I file my own. I think, most sessions I filed 60 or 70 bills, and most senators file a lot of bills. And so I haven't seen any bills on gambling so far.
All right. You just came off of a 130 city stop around rural Texas.
Yes.
One of which was when I saw you last in Lubbock, and I'll tell you, the talk of the town in Red Raider country is the first item on your educational priorities list, which said a new fund for non-PUF schools. Governor Abbott has promised $1 billion endowment for Texas Tech, at least, maybe University of Houston, to add some more schools into the fold. Is that the false hope that Texas Tech and other schools not named University of Texas and A&M have seen in the past, or is this a session where a $1 billion endowment is a possibility? Is that your plan as well?
So on my priority list at the press conference, I had a new PUF fund listed. Here's the deal. Most people don't know this, that the University of Texas and Texas A&M, they share in oil royalties from West Texas. It's called the PUF fund. That's why it's called PUF. A permanent university fund. And that has grown to billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in endowment. And those universities have the opportunity not only to get state funding, but they are able to pull money down from that. And we have 35 or 36 public schools in the state. They're outside those, total, including their systems. But schools like Texas Tech, schools like University of Houston, and others around the state aren't a part of that, like Texas state schools. And so there's been a clamor over the years to either be included in it or to have their own fund. We have a small fund for them called the HEAP fund, but it doesn't do nearly as much. So I think that there's probably more conversation about that now and a willingness to create that. And that's something when I talked about when you have a surplus of one-time things you can do, you could take some money and start an endowment for those schools. Every public school in the state of Texas should have the opportunity to have an equal opportunity to educate their students. And our great University of Texas and A&M are our flagship universities, research universities, but we should have more research universities. And so Tech and University of Houston, our other schools, are great schools, but they want more funding from a type of fund like that, and I'm supportive. I don't know what it will look like and how much it will be, but I'm supportive.
Those universities are well aware of the challenges and their desires. You say you're supportive. My question, though, really is the rest of the Senate support. Is the support there for,
I think so.
And
here's the reason. Not to cut you short, but here's the reason. There's only one senator who represents the University of Texas. There's only one senator who represents College Station. Okay? All the other senators represent schools in their districts that are not part of the PUF fund, for the most part. Okay. So absolutely, they want to bring help.
You mentioned that a lot of the senators could be supportive of the PUF fund given where they represent, but there's a whole lot more University of Texas grads and Aggies in the House. This is going to take a bipartisan heavy lift or bicameral rather?
Yeah, I really don't think it's going to take a heavy lift.
Okay.
Because we have the money to do it this time to create an endowment, and I would like for A&M
Right.
and Texas to potentially contribute to that to help us. But it's not taking anything away from the current PUF fund.
Okay.
We're not changing the current fund. We're creating a new fund.
This isn't only about the permanent university fund, though. Everything that comes within your priorities and under the surplus is going to take some bicameralism.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. We'll have to work. That's why in my press conference I didn't put out specifics. I put out a few specifics.
Have you discussed these priorities with Speaker Phelan, though? How are your discussions with him?
He sets out his priorities. He has his job to do. He has a different job than I have. He gets elected by the people in a 30, 40, 50,000 people in his district, and he gets elected by 150 House members. I get elected by over 4 million people in the state of Texas. And that's who I listen to. And that's my responsibility to them. And, and let me say this, and all the other people who didn't vote for me either, because most of what we do, when you think about it, 53% of our budget is education, 35% is healthcare, 11% is public safety. None of that is partisan. So everything we do, tries to help all Texans. But on the issues that I ran on, to those people who elected me, I answer to over 4 million people. The speaker answers to the 76 people who elected him to be speaker and the people in his district, 30 or 40,000 to vote for him. So we have different jobs. So I think that we'll match up. I think what I've laid out has been well received by members in both chambers, and I made it very clear. These are concepts, and I want House members and Senate members to now get in the specifics and help write the bills. That's why I sit back and listen to them. I don't know what the final property tax bill is going to look like. I know I want to increase the homestead exemption. I think that will happen. I know I want to, and let me get to the rural Texas piece of it. When I traveled to 130 cities across rural Texas in 17 days, and it was a highlight of my life. I sat down at breakfast, lunch, and dinner with sheriffs and county officials and folks. I visited businesses everywhere I went. That's a lot of towns and a lot of people I met. And I came away with two things. And one is we have to do something differently that we've never done before. And this could be a heavy lift, but I think we'll get there. We do not fund our counties, for the most part, for anything dealing with law enforcement. We've always looked at counties that they have to fund the sheriff, which runs the jail, which runs his deputies, right, creating law enforcement. And they can't handle it by themselves anymore. I bet sheriffs out there making $30-some thousand a year, deputies making $20-some thousand. They don't have the equipment they need. Their car's got 150,000 miles on it, but they're getting crime from all the illegal immigrants that are crossing the border, 2 million a year under Joe Biden compared to about 400,000 a year in the past. These are just the people we apprehend that are getting through.
If you ask Senator Charles Perry out of Lubbock what this session will be about, he tells you that it'll be an infrastructure session. His number one priority is making sure that rural Texas is conservative with its water and that the cotton farmers and the ranchers out there have enough to sustain their business and our state. But if you look at your priorities, infrastructure and water do not make the top 20 or so.
Ryan, we'll pass hundreds of bills. I listed 21. I listed 21 that were basically, for the most part, new ideas. We put billions of dollars into water in 17. We will continue to do that. What I laid out in my press conference was, how do we structure this budget? How do we spend the money? And here are the new ideas. Property taxes.
It's a high dollar ask, though. Is there money in the surplus to do that?
Yeah. Ryan, I'm talking about these priorities. We will obviously do something on water. I couldn't list 50 or 60 things in a press conference. It was 45 minutes as it was, as you know.
Right.
So these were the priorities I focused on, and you haven't let me get to the rural Texas priorities, which are important.
Oh, we're talking about that now.
It was centered around sending money from the state to our counties, our rural counties, to help them pay for law enforcement. That's never been done before. That's going to be a lot of money, but we have to give those sheriffs and those deputies and those counties help. The second thing that you haven't touched on, Ryan, which was a big part of my press conference, is I have a program, $2 to $2.5 billion to build more mental health care hospitals across Texas. Yes, we're going to focus on water. We always focus on water. Charles Perry is the expert on it. That's why I have him chair of water. Okay, he'll be fine. I know what he's doing, and I trust him explicitly. Okay. But these programs about helping law enforcement are unprecedented. And building out more mental health care hospitals. We've built 5 or remodeled 5 in the last 6 years as lieutenant governor. We put more money into mental health care facilities and programs than any lieutenant governor in history. It's a very important issue to me. 40% of families in America will be touched by mental health issues, whether it's mild depression or some serious issue. And many of the people we have in our jails across Texas have mental health care issues and no place to go. We need more beds. We need more hospitals. And that was one of my major priorities. So, of course, we're going to work on water and many, many more things.
You said that we cannot leave the building if another Uri can happen.
Right.
First of all, that narrative seems to diverge a little bit from the optimistic assessment that Governor Abbott has given. So I'd be interested to hear what the daylight is between you and the governor on this issue. But specifically, I want to ask you about the solution you proposed about expanding natural gas production. Yeah. You called renewables a luxury and emphasized the need for more natural gas.
Yeah. Let's not start the session off, since you're covering the Capitol, trying to divide the governor and I, because we're on the same page on almost all these issues. We both want the best grid we can have.
Good.
The reforms that we made in Senate Bill 2 and 3 were good. It got us through the hottest summer we've ever had, or one of the hottest summers, but we need more power. In rough numbers, we have about 85,000 megawatts of power available if everything is running, but that includes about 25 or 30,000 megawatts of power. So if you have 85 and you subtract 25, you're at 60,000 megawatts of dispatchable power, thermal power, right. Natural gas, hydroelectric, hydrogen, coal, nuclear. That's what is dependable. You're not counting what the weather is to have it. So on a really cold day or a really hot day, we can need up to 68 to 75,000 megawatts or more. We don't have that now of dispatchable power. We must build more natural gas plants, maybe hydrogen plants. We're already building some of those. But we must build more natural gas plants, and we have to do that before we leave. It will take 3 years at a minimum to get new plants in the ground up and running. We have to have more dispatchable power that we can rely on for the grid. We're adding 1,000 people a day. Businesses are moving here. More need for the grid to be stronger and more power. And so we have to do that. If we don't do it in this session, that's another 2-year delay. We don't have that time to do that. You have to have enough power that you can count on. Wind is great, solar is fine, but it's a luxury. It helps the environment, which is not a luxury, but it helps the environment, but it also helps keep our prices down. But I call it a luxury because we can't depend on it. Beto O'Rourke wanted, and the Green New Deal people want all wind. What do you do when the wind's not blowing? You can't turn your lights on. If you can't turn your lights on, then the economy doesn't work.
And I don't think that was a campaign point, Governor, but I'm sorry.
I said, we're going to get it done. We're going to add more dispatchable power. We have to have it.
To what extent do you sacrifice renewable energy and the goals
we're not
that we have
sacrificing
towards
renewable
expanding
energy.
that industry if
Ryan,
you're prioritizing
Ryan,
natural gas?
We're not sacrificing renewable energy. You know who the leader in the country is on renewable energy? Texas. We have more renewable energy than any other state. We're 5th in the world, Ryan. There's the United States as a whole. There's, I think, China's next, India and Germany, and Texas. So we've invested. The whole point is, in the last 20 years, we put almost all the investments, the federal government, state and local governments, into renewables. And what we found out during Winter Storm Uri is when the wind doesn't blow, when the sun's not out, we didn't have enough natural gas. We had other breakdowns and other problems. But the bottom line is this: if you need 75 or 80,000 megawatts of power, you need those to be secure, dispatchable, natural gas, hydroelectric, coal, or nuclear. That's what you have to have. The wind is great when it's blowing. And I don't think I can say it any simpler than that. We're 5th in the world. Renewables are not going to suffer, but natural gas and dispatchables have suffered for 20 years, and we need to get back to building those plants if we're going to have a secure grid. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Ryan.
Governor, I appreciate all of your time as always. Look, I got plenty more, and I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk. I appreciate your time before session. I hope that you can get some rest before we go at it again.
We're good. Thank you, Ryan.